Well, if I look a little red in the face, it's for two reasons. One, I just got back from war, so I'm probably slightly sunburned. And two, there's a big white surface right over there, reflecting light right in my face. So if I get a bit squinty, that's why. Today we're talking about playtesting. I like to think that larger than average, maybe not a majority, larger than average percentage of my viewers are people who work on their own games or do like extensive homebrew for existing games. In any event, you have content that you have created, but which needs to be tested to see if it's suitable for a wider audience. You have to do that by playtesting. So the question then comes to your mind: when and how should I playtest my material? And so I have some thoughts on this. If you're doing a D&D-esque kind of game, that is, sort of a wide-scale game with lots and lots of player options, I think you need to start small. I think you need to start basically as soon as possible. You have your core engine, that is like your basic rules, the rules that everyone follows, how the game progresses. I wouldn't even go as far as to say flesh out a few classes. I think make pre-generated characters. And whether or not those characters fit within even if those characters couldn't be made legally in the game that you have in mind, just get the notions on paper. Generate these characters, make sure that they are cohesive, and then make enough content for a one-shot to fill up whatever time space you have. Not time space, time slot. Whatever time slot you have for playtesting. And get a group of people together who you like and whose opinions you trust, that they can give you a valuable feedback. But the point being that you need to start small. You need to start kind of at the low end. Don't try to finish your game before playtesting. Don't try to have everything and then playtest it and see if any of it works. That's a disaster. That is building a tower all the way to the top and then checking to see if the foundation is fine. Don't do that. That's the chances that you'll get it right on your first try are astronomically small. Infinitesimally small. Astronomical is big. No, it's very, very, very small. And if something goes disastrously wrong, that's so much work to fix. And nearly the majority of that content isn't going to get used in the playtest. So there's no reason to develop it before the playtest. So I think starting small works. I'll give you a story of my own playtesting. Legends and Lore, the project that I'm working on, the name is probably going to change. I haven't decided what it's going to be yet. But Legends and Lore is a Powered by the Apocalypse style of game where characters have, a number of special abilities to choose from. It's relatively light is what I'm getting at. And so even then, I made 13 classes for this game. I probably shouldn't have done so many. I probably should have done 5 or 6 maybe, and then expanded out from there. But, this was my first time. I think I went overboard. So thus the advice to develop less, have less of the game completed or, in a playtestable state, before you start your first playtest. I'm a big proponent of the rapid iteration method of development. We're going to get a version of the game just out there, just as soon as possible, in the roughest state, just very first draft, get it out there for playtesting. After the first playtest session, I should have an amount of feedback necessary to make a bunch of changes. Second session, I'm making more changes. Third session, I'm making more changes. And maybe I'm making fewer changes each time as I hone in on exactly where the game is supposed to land. In the current playtest campaign that I'm running, or that I'm not running, that I'm in, actually. So one of the other players volunteered to run the next session, or the next campaign. In that campaign, I haven't done any updates to the characters. Well, that's not exactly true. I've done like wording and clarification updates. Not just to make it clear what the intended function is. Not really meaning to change the actual function of the abilities. But beyond, like, I have some changes ready to go, but for this campaign, I'm not making any changes. The first campaign was nearly every single session was noticeable, significant changes, either to the core engine or to individual character abilities. The things that I learned from those playtest sessions would expand into the other things that I had developed. And so I was making changes to classes that I'd never seen play. Why should I have written those classes out before they saw play? That was a mistake. That was just over preparation on my part. So, I think if I were to do this specific project again, I would probably have done it a little bit differently, but you live and learn, you learn, right? If your project is, and that's for a Powered by the Apocalypse type game. For a much bigger scope game, like a D&D Light or a D&D-esque or a D&D like, these sort of like heavier, crunchier games, the medium to heavyweight games. I think it's even more important to start small. Start with your scope extremely narrow. Figure out what works and what doesn't within that scope, and then expand your scope a little bit and do another playtest. And then expand your scope a little bit, do another playtest. That process, where you do noticeable, like big, significant changes between every playtest session, I think is the way to go. That sort of like that rapid iteration approach to playtesting and development. This is how I've done all of the RPGs that I've designed, where like nearly every session is just big, massive, sweeping changes. All right, that's a problem. I'm going to have that fixed by the next time we meet. That's the kind of development that I think is ideal for an independent game designer. And mainly it's just to keep from getting burnt out. Because if you develop, say, 150 pages, like 150 pages is pretty small for an RPG. If you develop 150 pages of content, and then you find out in the first playtest session that, oh, actually, some of my core ideas just don't work, or they're going to need to be rewritten, or maybe, something like that, some like significant problem that has implications for the entire rest of the system. Oh man, that sucks. That's going to take all the wind out of your sails. You're going to lose so much momentum. It's going to be a tons of work to fix. So no, I think you should draw up a basic system document. Like, here's the basic steps for how to play the game. And then you do enough content just for like a set of pre-generated characters for the players who are helping you playtest. Maybe ask them ahead of time, like, what kind of character do you want to play? Here's the list of archetypes that I have in mind. They'll tell you, you make a character for them. Like, character creation does not have to be part of the first playtest. Testing character creation is important, but I think it should come later. I think playtesting the actual game mechanics is super duper important. And once you have the game as a whole, once you have like this sort of like baseline, here's how the game works, here's what the game values, here's what is important for characters to be able to do, then you start to build character creation rules, and then the players can create their characters in the context of the larger game. If you're trying to make a character for a game that you've never seen before, it functionally does not exist yet, I mean, that's kind of aimless, right? You don't get a lot of valuable information about that process because the player doesn't have the information or the experience necessary to know basically what they're doing. So I think character creation does not need to be first for a heavier weight game. If you are expanding upon an existing game or like greatly, not reskinning, sort of retooling an existing game that then your playtesting players are familiar with, that's a different story. then maybe you could do character creation. But then you're doing significantly less manual work, since they kind of already know what the game is about. They probably are familiar with the basic engine that you're using, etc. And so I think the more work you're going to put into your final product, the earlier and the simpler you should start playtesting. If you're doing a sort of smaller campaign, like if you're doing a one-page RPG, if you're developing a one-page RPG, then yeah, one page, whatever, doesn't matter. Like do your couple of playtests with 1 page worth of rules, right? And so I think there's sort of a sliding scale of like how much by percent, how much of your game should be done, which is inversely proportional to how much work you're doing developing the game in the first place, or in the end. So that's my take. Rapid iterations, playtest early and iterate between every session, and then slow down over the course of the playtesting process. And I think that has been working out really well for me in the game that I'm developing, and so I think it probably will work out really well for you. And it just makes logical sense to me. Let me know if you disagree.